like to also point out that it's just, if you're on the consent agenda, part of our agenda, also employ the Susan Lemaster. Are you here?
Yes, hi.
Susan, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Took you almost that long to get here, but thank you very much. Thank you for coming with us.
Thank you.
Take care of yourself. We have in consideration for possible action on the 2012-2013 college annual plan. Do I have a motion for acceptance of the 2012-2013 annual plan? Move for acceptance. Is there a second?
Second.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Kathy Friedrich will make a presentation. You have copies of that. Unfortunately, the logistics of this room have the projector mounted in a way that we can't get it around. So I apologize to the audience because you will get a little bit of printing in that, looking at that, but all the board members have this back.
Good afternoon. Dr. Durance asked me to go over a few items with you in regards to the annual plan. Go ahead, next slide. The first thing I wanted to go over with you was the actual process that we went through in developing the annual plan. As you're aware, we have a planning council on campus. This council looks at recommendations regarding how to spend discretionary funds and whatnot. There's several subcommittees on the council that look at different issues. There's a student success enrollment one, there's a teaching and learning, and technology committee. So they spend a year researching different issues and put forth recommendations to the president's cabinet for consideration. The cabinet looks at those approves those that they think we can move forward with and fund or feasible. And that's something that gets then into the annual plan. The other big part of developing the plan is the leadership retreat, which some of you participated in. That's when we look at the data from the past year to see how well we're doing carrying out the current plan, where are we in relationship to our strategic goals and whatnot, and then the leadership then identifies priorities, things that we want to focus on the next year. Those two sets of information goes to the Institutional Effectiveness Council, who then drafts the annual plan. Okay. That plan goes then to the cabinet. They review it, align it with the budget, make whatever modifications they feel are necessary, and then it comes to you for your approval. Okay. One of the things Dr. Durance asked me to talk a little bit about with y'all are the targets that we have and how we track our progress. I mentioned that when we have our leadership retreat, we review our strategic goals and the targets that we have for those goals. Right now, the main targets that we have are those that deal with closing the gaps. Closing the gaps, as you will recall, is the state's higher education plan, and we are required to submit to the state where we expect our enrollment to be in 2015 and 2010, and also how many awards we think we will be awarding. Okay, so we use the data that we present to the state to help us track our progress in reaching those goals. And then we also use data from the accountability system that the state has. The state wants to see, are we in line with the representation of our district in the area that we serve? Okay. So when we look at these, basically what I'll do is I'll say, okay, this is where we want to be in 2015, and this is where we are now. So for example, if we had an enrollment of 50 students and we wanted to get to 100 students, how many students would we need to enroll each of those 4 years in between or 5 years in between to get to that 100? Okay, 20. So, all right. So those in-between points become our milestones. If we are able to achieve those milestones each year, then we're going to meet our targets, our goals. Okay. So that's what we do. We look at what is it going to take to get to that target by 2015. We use a little chart. The green means we are on track, we're meeting our targets, our milestones, we're going to meet our goal. The yellow triangle is where we're making progress, but is not as much progress as we should be making. We're within 10% of that milestone. Okay? And then the red diamond is we are not making enough progress. Okay? Next slide. So this is the most recent data that we have in relationship on enrollment to our Closing the Gaps targets, and you can see that our total enrollment and our enrollment for our minority students, we're making progress, but not enough progress. We're within about 10% of the milestones, but we are lagging behind where we should be to meet our targets. With regards to white students, we're not meeting our targets. Okay? Awards, the only actual measure that the state looks at is the total number of associate degrees, and we're doing a good job in terms of the number of degrees that we're awarding. Now, it could be that we may need to reassess that target and maybe be a little more ambitious, but for now, we're on track to meet our target. Next slide. Okay, I mentioned that the accountability system looks at the representation of our area. So the first column there is the breakdown of what our service area is in terms of ethnicity and gender. The next column is our credit enrollment for the previous year, and then you can see the gap or the difference between the two. Okay, so we have a larger percentage of females enrolling at the college than the percentage in the service area. And then we are lagging behind with regards to Hispanic students and slightly behind with white students. So that's basically how we are, what we're looking at to assess how we're making progress with regards to our 4-year strategic plan and the annual plan. Each year we look at that data. Once the annual plan has been approved by the board, there's 2 things that will happen next. The first thing with the annual plan is we'll need to assign priorities. We will identify someone who is responsible, a lead person for each one of those priorities that's listed in the plan. That person will need to bring together the appropriate people on campus to develop the strategies for carrying out that priority, and they'll have to do a task list with dates and whatnot, basically an action plan for that specific priority. How are we going to carry out these strategies to make sure the college meets this priority? The other thing that we will be doing in the fall is we will be pulling together a group of leadership folks to look at our key performance indicators. Are these the measures that we want to be looking at? Are there some measures that we're not looking at? Do we need to make some adjustments there? We're also going to look at the historical and trend data and use that to set targets for the rest of our key performance indicators where appropriate. We just have targets right now for enrollment, awards, and representation, but we have other measures that we look at: course completions, progress through developmental courses on through gatekeepers classes, lots of different measures that we need to establish targets for. So we will be doing that early in the fall semester. That's all I have. Are there any questions that I can answer for you?
Any questions for the board? We have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further questions? Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those against by nay. That motion carries. Very good. We have a couple of things that inadvertently were included in a part of our agenda today that probably need our attention. And it comes for how the agenda is aligned. If you look over them, you scan them as you usually do. And one of those things is possible action consideration for the Blackboard agreements, which we did not discuss in any one of our committee meetings or before the board. And I think that it would be untruthful for us not to do that. So I would like to ask Dr. Durrance, could you bring that back to the board for us so we can discuss that and approve it, acceptance or removal for whatever reason?
I can. This is something that's done periodically. Blackboard is our what we use to deliver our online courses.
Yes.
And therefore, we have to periodically renew our contract. But I can ask Lisa Templer to give the board some information, some background on this.
Also, Sandra Blink is here, our purchasing director, and she has some details that you might be interested on. If you were to come up to Sandra, please. Please tell me what page it's on.
150.
Pardon me?
150.
Thank you.
I apologize, by the way, for moving through that so quickly.
Blackboard is what we use in our district center. It is a platform that we have been using for years. It used to be WebCT. It's now Blackboard WebCT. And also Blackboard kind of merged with Wimba, and they have Blackboard Collaborative, and that's for the online teaching. We had HyperAlert, which was an emergency notification system, but Chris Clausen from the city of Texas City gave the college a demonstration because our HyperAlert system couldn't push out all the messages fast enough in an emergency. And so we adopted this emergency notification that the city of Texas City uses and we're very pleased with, and it is a Blackboard platform as well. Sandra, I'm going to let you go over the dollars. Since we had all these agreements, she worked with Blackboard to align the start date and end date of our agreements with them.
Yes. So, there's actually 4 platforms with Blackboard that we are contracting with them for right now. Learn is one of them for the online learning system. Collaborate, as Lisa mentioned, is the Wimba web conferencing. And the annual integration with Blackboard is just a maintenance, basically, that we pay each year for Datatel and Blackboard integration into the system. And then Connect, again, is going to take place at HyperAlert. So what I did was I was negotiating basically with Blackboard to align all of the agreements to expire at the same time at the end of each fiscal year, rather than all of these platforms actually were expiring at different intervals throughout the year. So they proposed pricing for the first year to align everything at the end of August 31st of 2013 with a total cost to contract with them for 3 years for $60,494. That's why you see such a big difference in cost for 2012 through 2013 versus 2014 and then 2015, because the cost for year 1 is actually prorated for a shorter period of time. And then you get into a full year for 2013 and 2014, and then 2014 and 2015. Now then, Blackboard did ask if we wanted to join in with them for a 3-year contract, which is actually about a 6% cost savings to do that if we sign up for 3-year contracting for all platforms across the board. So there's about a 6% cost savings for a 3-year agreement versus annual agreements. So the cost for 6-year agreements for all 4 platforms is the cost for a 3-year agreement for all 4 platforms is $239,028 versus renewing these agreements annually would be $253,282. If we had renewed those agreements in all platforms annually. So that comes to a cost savings to the college of $14,253 over the 3-year term. So if you don't have any other questions?
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
So we're proposing to renew these agreements on a 3-year term versus annually.
Very good.
And the termination dates are complete, co-terminus now,
I'm sorry?
and the termination dates are now co-terminus.
They're all coterminous to August 31st. Yes.
I'd make a recommendation that we approve the Blackboard contract for a 3-year period.
Motion has been made, has been seconded. Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Seeing and sensing none, I think you're ready to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those against, by the sign of nay. That motion carries. Also, ladies and gentlemen, we skipped right through and did not do anything with the financial.
This part of the consent agenda.
Yeah, it is part of the consent agenda. But every once in a while, we ought to stand up and say, this is what our finances are. What do you think? And accept it as what?
Would you like for us to take that off the consent agenda in the future?
Let's do that.
It's always been there.
I understand.
Any other